Ethan Miller was not a man easily impressed. He lived alone on a quiet patch of farmland, halfway between nowhere and the next cup of bad diner coffee. His life was simple, fixing tractors, patching fences, and occasionally talking to his old dog about the unfair price of gasoline. But that night was different. That night the sky screamed. It started with a bright flash over the hills, then a sound like thunder cracking right above the earth. Ethan looked up from his half-finished mug of instant coffee, blinking as a streak of blue light tore across the stars and crashed into the woods behind his barn. The windows rattled. The lights flickered. Even the dog barked once, then wisely hid under the table. "That's new," Ethan muttered. He grabbed his flashlight, slipped on his boots, and jogged into the cold night air. The smell of burnt ozone hit him before he even reached the tree line. There was a faint, pulsing glow ahead, bluish-white and steady, like the heartbeat of a machine. Ethan stepped carefully over broken branches and scorched dirt until he found it, a metallic pod half buried in the ground. Steam hissed from the seams. The air around it crackled like static. "Well," he said to no one, "that's definitely not a tractor." The pod gave a small click, and a door opened. Ethan jumped back as a figure stepped out, coughing into the smoke. She was tall, slender, and wrapped in something that shimmered like liquid glass. Her hair caught the moonlight in strands of silver, and her eyes, they glowed faintly, like stars trapped in crystal. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then Ethan, ever the practical man, cleared his throat. You okay there, miss?" The woman blinked, confused. "Your language primitive but understandable." Her voice was smooth, almost musical, but it carried a strange echo, as if she were speaking through layers of air. "Primitive?" Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Well, sorry, we're not all fluent in space talk." "Space talk," she repeated, frowning. Then she tilted her head and squinted at him. "You are human." "Last I checked." Her eyes widened like she'd discovered an endangered animal. "Incredible, you actually exist." Ethan stared. "You didn't expect humans to exist. Lady, you're standing on Earth." The woman looked around, her silver hair floating slightly as if ignoring gravity. "So this is Earth," she whispered. "It's smaller than I imagined." Ethan chuckled. "You get used to it. Want to come inside before you freeze your whatever off." She blinked again, processing his words like she was translating them in her head. "You are offering shelter." He shrugged, seemed polite. "Besides, it's cold and you don't look like you packed a jacket." She followed him hesitantly, her movements graceful but wary, like a deer that just discovered shoes. As they stepped into the farmhouse, she looked around with wide eyes, taking in the peeling wallpaper, the cluttered table, and the ticking wall clock. "This is your dwelling?" she asked softly. "Yeah," Ethan said, hanging his coat. "Not much, but it's home." She nodded slowly, still staring at everything like it might start singing. "It's cozy." He poured her a mug of coffee and slid it across the table. "Here, drink this. You look like you've had a rough landing." The woman leaned close, sniffing the mug suspiciously. "What is this, a chemical?" "It's coffee," Ethan said, amused. "We drink it to stay awake." She touched the cup, then jerked her hand back. "It's hot." "Yeah, that's kind of the point." She frowned at him. "You boil your food." "Only the good stuff." He grinned as she hesitantly lifted the cup and took a sip. Instantly, her eyes went wide. "It tastes like burnt earth." Ethan laughed. "Congratulations, you've just experienced humanity's greatest addiction." She coughed, setting the cup down. "You people are insane." "Guilty as charged." He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "So, you got a name?" The woman hesitated, then said something that sounded like static mixed with singing. Ethan blinked. "Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to spell that. Got anything easier?" She thought for a moment. "You may call me Lyra." "Lyra," he repeated. "Pretty name, I'm Ethan." She tilted her head again, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Ethan, primitive but acceptable." Oh, you're a charmer. Something softened in her eyes. I do not intend insult, it's just your world feels so alive. I can feel it through the air. The colors, the heat, even the sounds. She closed her eyes and smiled faintly. It's beautiful. Ethan watched her for a long moment, feeling a strange flutter in his chest. He met plenty of women in his life, none who talked like poetry while standing barefoot in his kitchen, wearing a space suit that looked like moonlight. He tried to play it cool. So, Lyra, you planning to fix that shiny tin can of yours, or do I need to call NASA? She blinked. NASA. Never mind, point is you need help. Her smile returned, small but real this time. You would help me. He shrugged. Well, you don't seem like the conquering type, and besides, you're kinda stranded, aren't you? Lyra looked down at her hands, her voice barely above a whisper. Stranded. Yes, that's one word for it. Ethan didn't catch the tone of sadness there. Not yet. He just smiled and said, then it's settled. I'll help you fix your ship, and you can tell me all about your space adventures or whatever. Lyra tilted her head, studying him like he was something rare. You would risk your time for someone you do know. Ethan grinned. That's what humans do, sweetheart. Lyra stared at him, eyes glowing softly in the warm kitchen light. Something like wonder or maybe affection crossed her face. Then, she said, voice trembling just slightly, perhaps humanity is not as primitive as I thought. Outside, the stars blinked quietly over the farmhouse, and for the first time since she had crash-landed, Lyra didn't feel lost. She felt curious, and maybe just a little alive. The morning after the crash, the sun rose pink and soft over Ethan's farm. Birds sang as if nothing extraordinary had happened, as if an alien woman wasn't currently sitting on his porch, wrapped in his old flannel shirt, staring at the sky like she could see through it. Ethan leaned on the door frame, sipping coffee, watching her. He still wasn't sure this was real. Maybe he'd finally lost it. Maybe the years of solitude had caught up to him, and this was all one weird dream starring the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen, who also happened to glow faintly when she sneezed. Sleep okay? He asked. Lyra blinked, turning her bright eyes toward him. Your dwelling vibrates constantly. He frowned. You mean the refrigerator? That noisy creature in the corner? Yes, she wrinkled her nose. It hums at me. Ethan chuckled. That's normal, it keeps food cold. Cold? She looked horrified. You deliberately freeze your food. Is this a world of madness? Ethan smirked. Lady, you haven't even seen microwaves yet. Lyra gave him a puzzled look, then smiled, a small, curious smile that made her eyes glow even brighter in the morning light. She looked different without the panic from last night. Softer. Less like a visitor from another world and more like, well, someone trying to figure it out. I must fix my vessel, she said, breaking his thoughts. It contains data that cannot fall into your government's hands. Don't worry, Ethan said. The government's too busy arguing about cows causing climate change to come poking around here. She tilted her head. Cows cause climate. Wait, no, don't explain, my brain hurts. Ethan laughed. Fair enough. They walked back to the crash site together. The ground still smelled faintly of ozone, but the smoke had cleared. Her ship, or pod, as she called it, looked like a cross between a sleek jet engine and a seashell. Half the panels were cracked and one side was completely fried. Lyra crouched down beside it, running her hands over the metal with something like affection. You did well, little one, she murmured. We'll get you flying again soon. Ethan raised a brow. You talk to your spaceship. She glanced at him. You talk to your truck. He opened his mouth to argue, then shut it. Fair point. She turned to him suddenly. You said you can repair machines, yes. Mechanic by trade, he said proudly. Cars, tractors, sometimes my neighbor's toaster when he gets drunk and tries to cook steak in it. Lyra blinked. Your species confuses me. You'll get used to it. She smiled again, but there was a tiny wrinkle between her brows. "Your tools, do they include molecular stabilizers or photon welders?" He laughed. "Try duct tape and a wrench." She stared. "You fix advanced vehicles with tape." "Not just tape," he said, feigning offense. "Also hope and swearing." Lyra looked at him for a moment, then burst out laughing, a clear, musical sound that made the air seem lighter. Ethan found himself grinning despite the strangeness of it all. "Very well," she said, brushing her hair from her face. "Show me your primitive methods, human mechanic." Back at the barn, Ethan gathered his tools while Lyra explored everything with childlike curiosity. She poked the old radio, gasped at the rusted tractor, and almost fainted when she discovered the electric socket. "It's alive," she exclaimed, pointing at the outlet. "That's just electricity," he said, chuckling. "It bites if you touch it." "Electricity," she repeated softly, rolling the word on her tongue like it was exotic. "Your world is raw power in chains." Ethan blinked. "That's actually kind of poetic." Lyra gave him a shy look. "We are taught to see the energy beneath all things. Every light, every spark is a conversation with the universe." He smiled. "You should write that down, could make you famous here." "I am already famous," she said absent-mindedly, then quickly added, "in a small circle." He didn't notice the way her voice hesitated. He was too busy trying to figure out why she looked sad when she said it. For the next few hours, they worked together. Ethan replaced wires and bent metal panels back into shape, while Lyra calibrated strange glowing crystals and murmured things in her alien language. Their hands brushed once when passing tools, and she flinched, not from fear but surprise. A faint blue spark jumped between them. "What was that?" Ethan asked. Lyra hesitated. "A resonance. Your energy interferes with mine." "Interferes, huh?" he smirked. "Guess that means I'm electric." She stared at him blankly, then tilted her head. Was that humor? "Yeah, you'll get used to that too." Lyra looked thoughtful. "It is strange. Your mind feels unpredictable, chaotic yet warm. Most species project patterns. You are noise and fire," and she stopped abruptly. "And?" he asked softly. Her eyes met his, glowing faintly in the sunlight. "And beautiful," she said, almost in a whisper. Ethan froze. The word hung between them like static in the air. She quickly turned back to her work. "Your ship engines are inefficient," she said briskly, "but clever in design." Ethan blinked, cheeks burning. Thanks." By late afternoon, the ship hummed weakly to life. A faint blue pulse ran along its hull. Lyra sighed in relief. "It breathes again." Ethan leaned against a tree, wiping sweat from his brow. "Glad I could help, though I have no idea what half of what I did actually did." "You fixed more than you think," she said softly, watching him. He looked up. "What's that supposed to mean?" Lyra smiled faintly. "You'll find out soon enough." Before he could ask, her wristband beeped, a sharp, metallic sound that made her flinch. She glanced at it quickly, muttering something in her language. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked. "Nothing," she said too quickly. "Just interference." But her eyes said otherwise. There was fear there and something else. She looked back at the sky, where the sun was dipping behind the trees. "You humans," she murmured, half to herself. "You fix things even when you don't understand them. You see fire and build warmth instead of running from it." Ethan smiled, not quite understanding her words but liking the way she said them. "We do what we can," he said simply. Lyra turned to him, her expression soft and unreadable. "And that," she said, "might be your greatest strength." The wind moved through the grass, warm and quiet. The ship pulsed with light, the air thick with unspoken questions. And for a moment, just a moment, Ethan wondered if maybe, just maybe, the universe had sent her here for a reason. The night crept in quietly, painting the sky with streaks of violet and gold. The air smelled of burnt metal and fresh grass, the strange mix of earth and elsewhere. Ethan sat cross-legged near Lyra's ship, his toolbox beside him, while she crouched in front of an open panel, light spilling across her face like soft starlight. They had been working for hours, and though she didn't say it, Lyra seemed to enjoy his company more than she expected to. She had met hundreds of intelligent beings across galaxies, beings with minds sharp as lasers and hearts like stone. But none of them had ever offered her coffee, or smiled at her as if she were simply a person, not a symbol or a title. "Pass me the blue wire," she said without looking up. Ethan squinted into the toolbox. "They're all blue." Lyra turned, frustration and amusement mixing in her glowing eyes. "The brightest blue one." He held one up. "This one." She sighed. "That's turquoise. Do you not have words for color gradients?" He grinned. "We have words, I just don't know them." Her lips curved. "Remarkable, your ignorance is almost artistic." Ethan smirked. "You're kind of mean for someone who crash-landed on my planet." "I am honest," she corrected, turning back to the console. "Mean would be saying your hair looks like it fought a storm and lost." He ran a hand through his messy hair, pretending to look offended. "Ouch, alien sass. Didn't expect that from the galaxy's first tourist." Lyra laughed, a light crystalline sound that made the stars seem closer. "You are impossible. And yet you keep me around." She didn't reply, but he noticed the faint shimmer in her cheeks, like she was hiding a blush beneath her glowing skin. As they worked, a sudden hum filled the air. Lyra's fingers danced across the glowing symbols on her console, but her brow furrowed. The hum turned into a high-pitched whine. Sparks flew. "Whoa, hey," Ethan shouted, grabbing a wrench. "What's happening?" "Energy surge," she yelled. "The containment core is destabilizing. I can't fix something if I don't even know what it is." Lyra hesitated, eyes darting to the small crystal at the center of the panel, a bright, pulsing shard that looked alive. "It's the heart of the ship. If it collapses, the energy will." Before she could finish, a flash of blue light burst out, throwing them both backward. Ethan landed hard, groaning. The world buzzed like a broken radio. When he looked up, Lyra was lying a few feet away, her hands glowing faintly. "Lyra," he shouted, stumbling toward her. She blinked, dazed. "I'm fine. Just—" she gasped as another spark leapt from her skin to his when he touched her arm. The air crackled between them like lightning caught in a jar. "What the hell was that?" he said, eyes wide. Her voice trembled. "Your contact interferes with my energy field." "Yeah, well, your energy field packs a punch." He smiled weakly, rubbing his hand. "You okay?" Lyra nodded, sitting up slowly. "Yes, but you shouldn't be able to touch me." "Why not?" "Because no human should survive the discharge of my kind's resonance energy. It can erase matter." Ethan blinked. "Erase like delete." "Like never existed," she said quietly. He looked at his hand, then at her. "Well, maybe I'm just built tough." Lyra stared at him for a long moment, her eyes full of something new, wonder, and maybe a little fear. "You shouldn't be possible." He smiled faintly. "Story of my life." For a moment they sat in silence, the air between them still humming softly. Lyra's gaze softened as she looked at him, the strange human who had risked himself for no reason other than kindness. She reached out hesitantly, brushing her fingers against his hand again. A small spark danced between them, but this time it didn't burn. It felt warm. Ethan's heart thumped hard in his chest. "Guess we're in sync now," he whispered. Lyra smiled. "Perhaps." They spent the rest of the night repairing the damage. Every so often she would glance at him, the way his hands moved confidently, the way he whistled off-key, the way his eyes never lost that strange mix of curiosity and humor. At one point he noticed her watching. "You keep staring. Am I doing something wrong?" She looked away quickly. "No, you're unusual." "Thanks, I think." "I've met thousands of species," she said softly. "But humans, you burn differently. You fall, break, rebuild, laugh, and still look up at the stars as if they're waiting for you. Ethan leaned against the ship, studying her. You talk like someone who's been looking at stars too long. Lyra smiled sadly. Maybe I have. Something in her voice pulled at him, a quiet loneliness hidden beneath her calm. For the first time, he wondered what kind of life she had left behind among those distant worlds. He wanted to ask, but before he could, the ship gave a low, steady hum, a sign of life returning. Lyra's eyes widened. It's stabilizing. Ethan grinned. Told you, duct tape and determination. She laughed again, shaking her head. Perhaps I underestimated your species. Glad to hear it, he said. So what now, you fly home? Lyra hesitated. Not yet, my navigation is still offline, and she looked at him, her voice softening. I wish to understand this world more, to understand you. Ethan blinked, caught off guard. Me. You fixed what I could not, she said, and you made me laugh, that's rare. He rubbed the back of his neck, trying not to smile too wide. Guess I'm full of surprises. Lyra tilted her head, eyes glowing faintly. I am beginning to see that. As the night deepened, they sat by the repaired ship, shoulders brushing, the stars spread wide above them. Neither spoke for a while. The silence was easy, the kind that doesn't need filling. Ethan finally said, You think we'll ever understand each other? Lyra turned toward him, her voice like a whisper in the dark. We already do. A soft spark leapt between them again, bright and fleeting, but this time neither pulled away. And under the endless stars, a strange connection grew, fragile, electric, and beautifully human. The next morning the world felt quieter, too quiet. Ethan woke to sunlight pouring through the window and the smell of burnt toast. For a second, he thought maybe everything that had happened had been a dream, the crash, the glowing woman, the laughter in the dark. Then he heard her voice in the kitchen. This toaster is unpredictable, Lyra muttered, staring at the smoking machine like it was plotting against her. Ethan leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, a grin tugging at his lips. You're supposed to wait for it to pop. It popped, she said, pointing accusingly. It attacked my bread. He laughed, walking over to take the charred slice. That's breakfast on Earth, edible chaos. Lyra frowned, then giggled softly. Your world is dangerously inefficient. Yeah, but you can't say it's boring. She looked up at him, and for a moment there was warmth in her gaze, soft and steady, like sunlight through glass. After breakfast, or what was left of it, they returned to her ship. The hull gleamed faintly now, repaired and humming with quiet energy. Ethan felt a strange mix of pride and sadness. He'd helped her fix it, which meant soon she'd be gone. So how long until you're space ready? He asked, pretending to sound casual. Lyra ran a hand along the side of the craft. A few adjustments, perhaps a rotation of your planet. A day, then. She hesitated. Yes, roughly. Ethan nodded. Guess that means you'll be leaving soon. Her eyes flickered, guilt, maybe even sadness. It was never meant to be long. He tried to smile. Well, you'll have quite the story to tell when you get home. Lyra didn't respond. Instead, she crouched near the engine bay, typing something on her wrist device. The soft blue light reflected off her face, painting her in shades of stars. Then the device beeped, a sharp, cold sound. She froze. Ethan frowned. What's that? Lyra didn't answer. Her eyes darted over the screen, her lips pressing into a tight line. Lyra. It's nothing, she said quickly, turning off the display. But her voice trembled just enough for Ethan to notice. Nothing, huh? He said, folding his arms, because that didn't sound like nothing. She looked away. It's complicated. He stepped closer. Try me. For a long moment she didn't speak. Then, with a sigh that sounded almost human, she said, That signal means my people know where I am. Ethan blinked. Your people, you mean? The galactic conquered, she said quietly. The governing alliance of my worlds. That sounds big. It is, she said, her tone soft but heavy. Too big, they'll come for me soon. He frowned. Why, you didn't do anything wrong, did you? Lyra hesitated, then met his eyes. Ethan, I wasn't just traveling, I was sent here to observe your species. He stared at her, the words slow to sink in. Observe, like spy on us. Not spy. Study, she corrected, her voice calm but trembling at the edges. To understand if humans were ready to join the conquered. Ethan took a step back, his chest tight. So all this meeting me, the ship, the crash, was just part of some science project. No, she said quickly. No, I didn't plan this. My crash was real. My time with you, it's real. Right, he said, forcing a laugh that didn't sound like him. Real enough until your people come pick you up and erase my memory or something. She flinched, eyes wide. Ethan. Don't tell me that's not what they do. Lyra's silence was answer enough. He turned away, packing. Unbelievable. I actually thought you liked being here. Thought maybe, he stopped, the words choking off. Lyra's voice softened. I do like being here. You made me laugh. You made me feel something I haven't felt in a long time. Then why does it feel like I'm just another thing to study? He muttered. She stepped closer, her hand reaching out, then stopping just short of his arm. Because I didn't expect to care, she said quietly, and I don't know what to do with that. Ethan looked at her, the sadness in her eyes, the way her voice cracked on that last word, and his anger faltered. Lyra. Before he could say more, the sky above them rippled. A strange shimmer spread through the air, like heat waves made of light. The sound that followed wasn't thunder. It was something deeper, mechanical, otherworldly. Lyra's face went pale. They're here. Ethan turned. From the clouds, a massive silver ship emerged, silent and smooth, descending with impossible grace. It didn't look like anything from human imagination, elegant and terrifying all at once. Those are your people, he said, heart racing. She nodded slowly. Retrieval unit. What does that mean? It means they've come to take me back. And me. Her lips parted but no sound came. That silence told him everything. A beam of light shot down from the ship, touching the ground near them. 3 figures appeared within it, tall, armored, faces hidden behind mirrored helmets. Ambassador Lyra of the Galactic Concord, one of them said, voice sharp and cold. You have violated containment protocols. Step away from the human. Ethan froze. Ambassador. Lyra swallowed hard. Ethan. Ambassador, he repeated louder. You're what, some kind of space queen? Not a queen, she said softly, but not far from it. The soldier spoke again. The human has been contaminated by classified contact. He will be memory wiped and relocated. Ethan's stomach dropped. Okay, no, that's not happening. He stepped forward, but Lyra threw out her arm. Don't move. Her voice carried a command he'd never heard before, strong, full of authority. The soldiers actually paused. Ambassador, one began, but she cut him off. He is under my protection. You will not touch him. That is against directive. Then direct this, she snapped, her eyes blazing like twin suns. The soldiers faltered, uncertain. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Ethan looked at her, heart pounding. You'd do that for me. Lyra turned to him, her voice trembling. You offered me coffee. He stared at her, this strange, brilliant, impossible woman, and for a heartbeat, the universe seemed to stop. The soldiers reached for their weapons. Lyra's hand found his. Run, she whispered. What? Run. And as the light around them flared, Ethan grabbed her hand and ran into the trees, heart racing, mind spinning, his world forever changed. The forest was alive with light blue streaks cutting through the darkness, burning holes in the air. Ethan had never run so fast in his life. His hand was locked around Lyra's, her grip tight, almost desperate, the warmth of her skin pulsing with faint energy that made his fingers tingle. Behind them, metallic voices shouted orders in that strange, perfect rhythm that didn't sound human at all. Target is mobile, activate pursuit. Ethan didn't dare look back. He just ran. Branches slapped his face, roots caught his boots, and his heart hammered against his ribs like a drum. "Where are we going?" he shouted between breaths. "Anywhere they are not," Lyra yelled back, her voice breaking into laughter, wild, breathless, and unreal. Even now, in the middle of chaos, she sounded almost thrilled. Ethan stumbled over a rock and nearly went down, but Lyra pulled him up with surprising strength. "You humans," she gasped, half laughing, half scolding. "So fragile and yet so stubborn." "Yeah," he panted, "we call it cardio." The forest around them lit up again, a burst of blue energy narrowly missing a tree. The explosion threw dirt into the air. Ethan coughed, pulling Lyra behind a fallen log. Okay, he said, catching his breath. "New plan, maybe we don't die tonight." Lyra pressed her wristband, the screen flickering. "If I can override their frequency, I can disable their scanners for a few minutes." "English, please." "I can make them blind," she said quickly. "Now that's my kind of plan." She closed her eyes, fingers moving fast across the device. Her glow brightened, a faint hum filling the air. Ethan watched, amazed, the light from her skin shifting in patterns, like constellations moving beneath her surface. Then the hum turned into a spark and her eyes flew open. Done. The forest went dark again, the blue lights faded, the shouts turned confused. Ethan grinned. "Nice trick, Space Lady." Lyra exhaled, smiling weakly. "Don't thank me yet, it will not last long." They crept through the underbrush, slower this time, keeping low. For the first time since the chase began, the night felt quiet again. Only the sound of leaves and their uneven breathing filled the air. Ethan peeked through the trees. "We should head toward the ridge. There's an old storm shelter near the cliff." Lyra nodded, following his lead. "You are very calm for someone being hunted by an interstellar unit." He smirked. "What can I say? Been chased by a few angry exes before." Lyra blinked. "Exes? Ex-girlfriends?" "Ah," she said thoughtfully. "You reproduce through emotional chaos. That explains a lot." He laughed softly, despite the fear twisting in his gut. "You really have a way with words." "And you," she said, glancing at him with a faint smile, "have a way of surviving what you shouldn't." Their eyes met for a heartbeat, long enough for something unspoken to pass between them. Then she looked away, cheeks glowing faintly brighter. By the time they reached the ridge, dawn was beginning to stretch across the sky. The shelter was little more than a metal door half buried in stone, covered in vines. Ethan yanked it open and motioned for her to go in. Inside it smelled of dust and rust, but it was dry and hidden. He lit an old lantern and the glow flickered across her face, soft, almost golden now. Lyra sat on the ground, catching her breath. "Your planet is exhausting." Ethan chuckled, dropping down beside her. "You get used to it." For a while, neither spoke. The silence between them wasn't awkward this time. It was heavy, full of things neither of them wanted to say first. Finally, Ethan broke it. "You didn't have to run with me." She looked up, her voice gentle. "Yes, I did." "Why?" "Because," she said softly, "I didn't want them to take away the one thing that makes this world worth understanding." He frowned. "And what's that?" Lyra smiled, a small, tired, beautiful smile. "You." Ethan froze. His heart skipped, maybe twice. He tried to find words, but all that came out was, "You're really bad at lying, you know that." "I am not lying." Her voice was steady now, serious. She leaned forward, her glowing eyes locking on his. "I've seen 100 worlds, perfect, powerful, peaceful, but none of them feel like this place does. None of them feel like you." He swallowed hard. "You're gonna make a guy blush, Lyra." "I've studied your species for years," she continued, almost as if she couldn't stop. You make mistakes, you fight, you destroy, but then you rebuild, you love, you hope, even when it hurts. Her hand brushed against his. This time he didn't pull away. The spark was still there, gentle, warm, alive. Maybe, she whispered, that's why I crashed here. Ethan's voice was low. You really think the universe wanted us to meet? Lyra tilted her head, smiling faintly. If it didn't, it's making a lot of mistakes. They both laughed softly. For a moment, the fear faded. The world outside didn't matter. There was only the soft hum of the lantern, the sound of their breathing, and the quiet rhythm of two hearts trying to understand each other. Then outside, the ground shook. The laughter died instantly. Lyra's wristband flared with red light. They found us. Ethan stood, grabbing a wrench from his bag, the only thing remotely close to a weapon. You're kidding. Unfortunately not. The earth trembled again, heavy footsteps, mechanical and close. Ethan turned to her. You said you can make them blind again. Not long enough, she said, her voice shaking, but maybe long enough for you to run. He frowned. No way, I'm not leaving you. You must, she said, stepping closer. If they take you, they'll erase you. He stared at her, defiant. Then I guess they'll have to erase both of us. Lyra's lips parted, shock, fear, and something deeper flickering in her eyes. You can't mean that. Ethan smiled faintly. You don't know humans very well yet. For a moment, neither moved. The light from the lantern flickered between them, between her glowing hands and his shaking ones. Then slowly, Lyra reached out, cupping his cheek. Her touch was electric and tender all at once. Stubborn, she whispered, so stubborn. Yeah, he said softly, but maybe that's why you like me. Lyra's smile was sad and beautiful all at once. Maybe it is. The door above them shook, dust falling from the ceiling. Ready, he said. Lyra took his hand again. Always. And together they turned toward the light breaking through the cracks, ready to face whatever came next, side by side. The storm shelter door exploded inward. Light poured through the cracks, not sunlight but cold, blue light humming with alien energy. The sound of boots followed, metallic and precise. Ethan grabbed Lyra's hand before thinking. Guess that's our cue. Lyra didn't argue. Her wristband flashed to life again, symbols racing across it. I can activate my ship's recall system, she said breathlessly. It will pull us to the ship's location if we survive the jump. Define if, Ethan muttered. Lyra gave him a sideways look, half nervous, half teasing. You humans and your optimism. Then she pressed the final command. A flash of white swallowed them whole. The world twisted. For a heartbeat, Ethan felt like he was falling through water and lightning at the same time. Then the air reformed around him, thinner, colder, full of static hums. He opened his eyes. They stood inside Lyra's ship. The floor beneath them glowed faintly with silver lines, pulsing like veins. The walls were smooth, alive, breathing almost. Outside, the curved glass canopy stretched the earth, small, blue, and distant. Ethan staggered. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. That was both the worst and coolest thing I've ever experienced. Lyra smiled faintly, her hair floating slightly in the low gravity. Welcome aboard. Yeah, thanks for the warning about the space teleport thing. I did say if we survive, she said, pretending to sound innocent. He couldn't help but laugh, even through the fear and adrenaline. You know, for someone who caused an intergalactic chase, you're weirdly calm. Lyra floated closer, her eyes shimmering with the reflection of the planet below. Because we're not safe yet. Ethan followed her gaze. The massive silver Concord ship hovered nearby, its hull covered in glowing markings that shifted like living script. It looked like something out of a dream or a nightmare. Can they reach us up here? He asked. Not if I engage the Virel drive, she said, sliding into the pilot's seat. Her fingers danced over the holographic controls. But they'll follow. They always follow. Then let's give them something to follow, he said, strapping into the seat beside her. Punch it. She blinked. Punch what? It means go. Oh, Lyra smirked. Such violent language for acceleration. She pulled a lever. The stars stretched, smeared into lines of light, and the world became motion. Ethan gripped the armrest, eyes wide as everything outside turned into pure color. Then silence. The ship slowed, the stars returned, and they floated in open space far from Earth, surrounded by the infinite. Ethan exhaled, his voice quiet. You actually did it. Lyra turned to him, smiling softly. Of course, I told you duct tape and hope. He laughed, and for a moment, everything felt impossibly light. They drifted for hours or maybe minutes. Time felt strange out here. Lyra adjusted systems while Ethan watched the endless stars through the glass. It was beautiful, but it also made his chest ache. So that's home, he murmured. Never thought I'd see it like this. Lyra followed his gaze. It's beautiful, fragile but strong like you. He smiled faintly. You keep saying stuff like that and I might start believing it. She looked at him then, really looked. The glow in her eyes softened. You should. For a moment the only sound was the faint hum of the ship. Then Ethan asked, what happens now? Your people won't just give up. Lyra hesitated. No, they'll expect me to return to explain myself. Explain what? That I've broken a dozen conquered laws, she said quietly. That I interfered with a developing species. That I cared too much. He turned toward her. Cared. Her lips curved into a sad smile. I was supposed to observe you, but instead I fell for you. The words hung in the air, heavy and soft. Ethan's breath caught. He wanted to speak, but all the words tangled somewhere in his throat. Lyra looked down, her voice trembling now. You made me laugh, Ethan. You made me forget who I was, what I was supposed to be. Do you understand how dangerous that is for someone like me? He reached out slowly, gently touching her hand. The warmth there was unlike anything else, part human, part starfire. Then maybe, he said softly, danger, worth it. Lyra met his eyes, and for the first time she looked uncertain. Humans, you risk everything for love. You jump without wings. That's how we fly, he whispered. For a heartbeat, the universe seemed to stop. Then she leaned forward and their foreheads touched. It wasn't a kiss, not yet, just two worlds trying to understand each other. Her glow brightened, wrapping them both in soft blue light. He could feel her heartbeat, steady, strange, but real. Then the ship's alarm shattered the silence. Lyra jerked back, scanning the console. They found us. Ethan groaned. You've got to be kidding me. The Concord is tracing my energy signature. We can't outrun them forever. Then what do we do? She hesitated. We could hide in subspace, but it will cut off my connection to their network completely. If I do that, I'll be exiled. He stared at her. Exiled forever. Yes. She looked at him, really looked. If I stay with you, I lose everything. My title, my world, my people. Ethan's chest tightened. He wanted to tell her to go, to do the smart thing, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he said, if you go back, what do you lose? Her silence was the answer. He smiled softly. Then maybe it's not a loss. Lyra's eyes glistened. You don't understand. You live a single lifetime. I have seen stars die. I have lived for centuries. Then live a little longer, he said, with me. Something in her broke, or maybe it healed. She smiled through the tears that shimmered like light. You are impossible. And you love it. Lyra laughed, shaking her head. Yes, I think I do. She pressed a glowing button on the console. The stars outside shifted, folding into a swirl of light and shadow. The conquered signal faded behind them. Ethan felt the hum change beneath his feet. Where are we going? She looked at him, eyes bright as dawn. Somewhere they'll never look. He grinned. And where that? Where no one ever thinks to search. She reached for his hand. right beside the impossible. Ethan squeezed her hand, feeling the pulse of two worlds becoming one. Then that's exactly where I want to be. Outside, the ship vanished into the fold of space, a streak of light between stars, carrying with it a mechanic from Earth, an alien ambassador, and something far more dangerous than rebellion. Hope. Space was quiet, too quiet. Outside the window, stars drifted like glowing dust, scattered across the dark sea. The ship floated silently, hidden in a pocket of folded light, a place between worlds where time seemed to hesitate. Ethan leaned back in the pilot's chair, staring at the endless horizon. It was peaceful, but it didn't feel like peace. It felt like waiting. Lyra stood near the viewing glass, her silver hair glowing faintly against the darkness. She looked out, expression distant, thoughtful, as if searching for something she couldn't quite see. "They'll find us eventually, won't they?" Ethan asked softly. Lyra didn't turn. "Eventually," she said, "the conquered never stops searching." He tried to smile. "Guess we'll just keep running then." She looked at him finally, her eyes full of that strange, aching light. "You make it sound easy." "It's not," he admitted, "but it's worth it." Lyra tilted her head slightly, a small smile playing on her lips. "You really believe that, don't you?" "Yeah," he said simply, "because I'm sitting here with you, and somehow that feels like winning." For a heartbeat, she just stared at him, as if memorizing the way he said it, the way he looked at her. Then she turned back to the stars, her voice softer. "You humans, you love so recklessly. You don't calculate, you don't weigh the risks. You just feel." "That's kind of our thing," he said with a grin. "We mess up, we get hurt, we try again anyway." Lyra was quiet for a long moment, her hands clasped in front of her. "Where I come from, love is not encouraged. It makes leaders weak, they say. It clouds judgment. But," she looked at him again, "I think it makes us remember we're alive." Ethan's chest tightened. "Then maybe it's time your people learned that." The ship's lights dimmed for a second, pulling them both from the moment. Lyra frowned and walked to the control console. "Strange. The power flux shouldn't drop here." "Translation?" Ethan asked. "It means something is wrong." A ripple ran through the hull, a low vibration that made the floor hum beneath their feet. Lyra's fingers flew over the controls. "No, no, this isn't possible." "What is?" "They've found us." Ethan stood. "Already how?" Lyra's face was pale. "They traced my core frequency. I didn't erase my identification beacon. I didn't want to lose everything." He saw the guilt in her eyes, not fear for herself, but for him. "Then we fight," he said. "You can't fight them, Ethan. They'll destroy this ship. They'll erase you." He stepped closer, voice firm. "Then we make them listen. We show them what humans are really like." Lyra shook her head. "You don't understand. They don't negotiate with primitives." He smiled faintly. "Good thing I'm not very civilized." The hull trembled again. Through the viewport, a massive shape emerged, the same conquered ship that had chased them before. Its light filled the void, sharp and pure, like judgment itself. Lyra's wristband beeped, and a cold, commanding voice filled the cabin. "Ambassador Lyra of the Galactic Concord, power down your vessel. Surrender the human. You are hereby charged with treason." Ethan muttered under his breath. "They sound like fun at parties." Lyra ignored him, standing tall. "You will not touch him," she said, her voice strong, almost regal. "You have broken every law of contact. Do not make this worse." "I made it better," she shouted, voice trembling with emotion. "You spend centuries claiming to seek peace, to understand life, and yet you fear the one species that feels it most deeply. You have been compromised." "I have been changed," she cried, "by them, by him." The silence that followed felt like the universe itself was holding its breath. Ethan reached out, touching her shoulder. "Lyra." She turned to him, tears glimmering at the corners of her eyes. "They'll destroy us if I don't surrender." "Then don't." Her voice cracked. I can't let them erase you. He smiled softly, brushing his thumb against her cheek. You can't stop being who you are, and I can't stop being who I am. Lyra's breathing hitched. Ethan, if they erase you, I'll. Then don't let them, he said. Show them what love looks like. Her eyes widened. For a moment the fear melted away, replaced by something fierce. She turned back to the console. Hold on. The ship surged forward, engines roaring. A wave of light chased them, but Lyra didn't slow down. If I can overload the Virel drive, she said, I can scatter our signal across 1,000 star systems. They'll never find us. Sounds risky. It will burn out the ship's power completely. We'll be stranded. Ethan grinned. Then I hope you pack snacks. Lyra glanced at him, part exasperation, part admiration. You are utterly insane. He winked. You love it. She laughed through the tears, threatening her voice. Yes, I think I do. Then she pressed the control. The stars exploded into light. The ship shook, alarms screaming. Ethan felt weightless, every atom in his body humming. He grabbed her hand and held on tight. The light grew brighter, until there was nothing but white. When Ethan opened his eyes again, it was quiet, too quiet. He was lying on the floor, the air warm and still. Lyra knelt beside him, her glow dim but steady. Did it work? He asked weakly. She smiled, exhaustion written across her face. We're gone. No one can find us now. He sat up slowly, looking out the window. The stars outside were unfamiliar, a new corner of the universe. So, he said softly, where are we? Lyra leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. Nowhere, everywhere, between stars. He laughed quietly. You're starting to sound poetic, you know that. I learned from the best. They sat together, watching the new stars drift by. No alarms, no pursuit, just quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like freedom. After a while, Ethan whispered, So what happens next, Ambassador? Lyra lifted her head, eyes soft. Lyra, she corrected gently, just Lyra. He smiled. All right, what happens next, Lyra? She looked at him, her glow returning, soft and warm. We live, however long that means, however far that takes us. Ethan brushed a stray lock of silver hair from her face. Guess that's not a bad plan. She tilted her head, smiling faintly. You think you can handle a lifetime with an alien? He grinned. If she keeps burning my toast and saving my life, yeah, I think I can. Lyra laughed, the sound like a bell in the silence. And as their ship drifted quietly through the unknown, two impossible beings, one human, one alien, held onto each other beneath the stars. For the first time, neither of them was lost. The silence after the light storm was deep enough to feel like holding one's breath inside a dream. Ethan opened his eyes slowly. The hum of Lyra's ship had gone quiet. The stars outside the viewport shimmered differently now, brighter, closer, almost trembling. For a heartbeat, he thought time itself had stopped. Lyra was there beside him, kneeling on the floor, her hands pressed against a faintly glowing console. Her silver hair was scattered around her like spilled moonlight, and the soft light coming from her palms looked dimmer than before. Lyra, Ethan said quietly, his voice cracking. She looked up and smiled, weak but still radiant. We did it, she whispered. They can't trace us anymore. Ethan sat up slowly. So we're free. Yes, she said softly. Then after a pause, but the ship's core is gone. We cannot go home. He blinked, still catching his breath. Then I guess we make a new one. Lyra laughed lightly, though her voice trembled. You make everything sound simple. That's because I'm simple, he said, grinning tiredly. Complicated people build the problems. Simple people fix them. Her laughter faded into a soft sigh. You are strange, Ethan Miller. And you, he said, smiling faintly, are the most amazing woman I've ever met, glowing or otherwise. Her eyes flickered with warmth. Careful, I might believe you. I was kinda hoping you would. They stayed there in silence for a while, floating between galaxies and unknown lights. Ethan looked out through the glass, where the stars formed 1,000 tiny mirrors of possibility. "It's beautiful," he murmured. Lyra followed his gaze. "We are in a region between mapped systems. No one comes here. No laws, no boundaries." He glanced at her. "Just us." "Just us." She said it like a confession, half relief, half fear. Ethan chuckled softly. "Well, I've been in worse company." Lyra's lips curved. "You always make jokes when things should be serious." "That's how humans survive," he said, looking at her. "We laugh when the universe doesn't know what to do with us." For a long moment, she just stared at him, her eyes full of something deeper than curiosity, something that looked dangerously close to love. "You're kind, you never stop surprising me," she said. "I've met civilizations that conquered suns, beings that reshaped gravity, and yet, none of them would run into danger just to protect someone they barely knew." Ethan smiled faintly. "Guess that's our flaw in our magic." Lyra shook her head slowly. "It's more than that, it's human." Then the soft hum of the console returned, a faint echo, a pulse like a heartbeat. Lyra frowned, walking toward it. "That shouldn't be possible," she murmured. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked. "The Concord signal, it's still faintly connected. My diplomatic channel, I thought it burned out, but—" her voice faded. "But what?" She turned to him, eyes wide. "They can still hear me." Ethan's heart tightened. "Then they know we're alive." "Worse," she whispered. "They can see through the channel if they re-establish contact." "Then turn it off," he said. She didn't move. Her gaze lowered. "If I do, it will destroy the last link I have to my home. I'll never speak to my people again." Ethan stepped closer. "Lyra, they were going to wipe me out, wipe us out. You don't owe them anything." "I owe them everything," she said softly. "I was their ambassador, their voice to the stars, and now I am their betrayal." He took her hand gently. "No, you're their hope. Maybe they just don't know it yet." Lyra stared at his hand in hers. "Hope," she whispered. "Such a small word, yet it changes everything." Her fingers tightened around his. "If I shut this down, I can't ever go back, not even to see my world one last time." Ethan looked at her, really looked. The silver light in her eyes reflected the whole galaxy. "Then don't look back," he said softly. "Look here." She met his eyes, and he saw something shift, an emotion she'd been holding back since the moment they met. "Ethan," she breathed. "Yeah. I think I finally understand what your kind means when they say love feels like falling." Before he could reply, she leaned forward and kissed him. The spark between them was real, warm, electric, alive. It wasn't like the static that had once startled them. It was gentle now, like the universe itself exhaled in relief. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "Wow," Ethan said softly. "Guess that's what interstellar diplomacy feels like." Lyra laughed, wiping a tear from her cheek. "You're impossible." "And you," he said, grinning, "are mine." Lyra took one last look at the glowing console. Then, without hesitation, she touched the center crystal. It flared briefly, then dimmed to black. The hum stopped. The connection to her world, her empire, her people, her title, was gone. "Done," she whispered. Ethan stepped beside her. "You okay?" Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes, for the first time, yes." The stars outside shimmered like a curtain of silver dust. Lyra looked out at them, her expression soft. "You know what this means, don't you?" He smiled. "That we're stranded between galaxies with no map, no backup, and a broken ship." She grinned. "Exactly." He put an arm around her shoulder. "Sounds like an adventure to me." Lyra leaned into him, her voice barely above a whisper. "I used to believe humans were fragile. Now I see you are indestructible where it matters most." "And where that?" "In here," she touched his chest, right over his heart. Ethan's throat tightened. Well, that's one way to make a guy feel invincible. You already are, she said, smiling. The ship drifted in silence for a long time, wrapped in light and possibility. Somewhere far behind them, the galaxy they'd escaped from spun on, unaware that two very different souls were writing a new kind of story, one not of conquest or command, but of connection. Lyra rested her head against Ethan's shoulder. What will we do now? He looked out at the stars. Explore, fix what we can, break a few rules, maybe find a planet with decent coffee. Lyra smiled. Coffee, she said fondly, the strange liquid that started everything. He laughed quietly. Yeah, guess we should have known the universe would change over caffeine. She tilted her head up, her glow soft and steady. Ethan Miller, she said gently, you may not have wings, but you've already taken me farther than I ever dreamed. He met her gaze, his heart steady, his smile soft. Then let's keep flying. Lyra took his hand, their fingers intertwining like the merging of two constellations. Together, she said. Always, he replied. And somewhere, beyond the reach of maps and memory, their ship drifted into the shimmer of the unknown, carrying two hearts that had defied an empire, rewritten destiny, and found something even greater than freedom. They found each other,